On this video, I'm going to show you the absolute easiest and least expensive way to properly run a 37-inch tall tire on the Jeep Wrangler 392. All right, let's get to it. Okay, so real quick, let me give you a fast update on my 2021 Xtreme Recon 392. Now, I had recently borrowed a set of 37s to fit under the Jeep because I wanted to see if it would work, and it did. Well, at least it did on the highway. I was curious to know how the power would feel with the 456 gears, and I was perfectly happy with the way the RPMs were. The power didn't feel like I lost a lot, so that was really good. In terms of actually cycling it off-road, for driving around light trails, it was not a big deal, but as soon as you articulated very heavily in the rear, I was rubbing, and so I knew I needed to do something. Up front, it was great. You didn't rub at all. So I ultimately made the decision to get my own set of 37s for the 392, and so now I have a 37 by 1250 Nitto Trail Grappler, and it is mounted on my 17-inch AEV Pintler wheel. And I'll give you the specs here on what the backspacing is and the offset. And the big thing to note here is AEV wheels typically have high numerical backspacing, which really helps with scrub radius, which is basically going to be your steering and your feedback from that. And that high backspacing figure is going to keep the wheel underneath the fender flare of the Jeep, so you're not going to be slinging as much stuff, and ultimately just makes for a better combo overall. So that's the setup that I have now, and the big thing here is how do you run 37s and actually make it work without doing an aftermarket suspension kit? Well, my solution was fairly simple. I ended up ordering a set of bump stop landing pads from JKS Manufacturing. Now, what these are is a simple bump stop pad that you bolt to the rear axle, and it comes with a 2-inch bump stop landing pad and 2 additional 1/2-inch bump stop landing pads. The nice thing about this is you can dial in your bump stop zone very easily and customize it for whatever tire you're running, or if you've got an aftermarket shock that you need to make sure you get to that bump before the shock collapses. So I thought, all right, this is the right way to go for me, and so that's what I ended up picking up. Now, installing them, super easy. You don't even have to pull off the tires. I backed the Jeep into the garage, and honest to goodness, it maybe took 20 minutes to unbolt the old ones and put the new ones on, and that's me trying to film it the whole time. It's a very quick and easy bolt-on install. This is the original one that I pulled off. It's a 1-inch cast iron piece. The new ones are some sort of plastic, polymer or something. It's really lightweight, not a big deal. And so I immediately just took to the street to see if I was going to get into the bump a lot faster. Now all I'm doing is subtracting an inch of up travel, so it's not an extreme modification. And driving down the road, the suspension doesn't move that dramatically anyway, so I really didn't notice anything until I started hitting speed humps and things like that. And you would kind of tell you were getting into the bump a little bit faster, but it never bucked the Jeep or did anything real weird. The big thing I noticed is I was no longer hearing the tire rubbing in the back. So that was a great thing. So for the road, I've kind of felt like, all right, cool, I solved the issue of rubbing in general, but I really wanted to test it off-road. So this is what I found. Okay, so this is it out on the trail. Now the bump is completely collapsed. Kind of hard to see there, but there you go. And you got plenty of room. It's tight, but not really rubbing anywhere. So 37's up front, not bad. I think it's gonna work just fine. So here it is with the 2-inch bump in it, and got plenty of room. It definitely looks like it's tight, but you can move the fender a little bit. I mean, if it's kissing on the inside, it's not by much. It looks like that's all you really needed. And now, just to get an idea how much this thing is tucked in here, so the front tire is literally off of the ground, as you can see. So we're about as twisted up as you can be for that. It's always, you know, completely stuffed in here, and the back tire's barely on. So not terrible flex for a you know, stock configuration. But 37s with just a 2-inch bump in the back seems to be working just fine. Now, I think that's pretty incredible. The fact that all it took was a set of 2-inch bump stop landing pads in the back, and I can run 37s and not rub. Now, I say not rub. I do think it's worth mentioning that a few times I felt the passenger side front tire just graze the skid plate for the front bumper, and I don't think it's enough that I need to modify the front bumper, but it did with the wheel turned all the way to the driver, and the Jeep really articulated. It happened once or twice, so I can't say that it's an absolute no rub situation, but it's a, I guess, no rub no damage situation. I could not tell where the tire had rubbed anywhere on inside of the fender flare. I articulated this thing multiple times where it was lifting a tire off the ground, so I don't know how much more I could have stuffed it. I mean, it was absolutely forced where it needed to be. And it's also worth mentioning, I had dropped my trail grapplers down to 13 psi. That's what I was running for when I was doing the majority of this sort of curiosity testing, and that's a great psi for non-bead lock for the heavier 392. I typically like to drop a little bit lower, but I need a bead lock to do that. I'm very happy with the trail grappler. They hook up very well here in the Southeast. We get a lot of mud, and that's why this tire typically becomes sort of my go-to. They're not loud on the highway. They drive really well. This set balanced really nicely. I've got no issues, no shimmies going 70 miles an hour on the road, so that's been perfectly good. And honest to goodness, the Jeep is super impressive as it is out of the gate. I do have a few complaints. I feel like that the front suspension needs more travel. It sort of tops out and you can sort of feel the thud, and the tire comes off the ground a little bit more than I think it should. It's a little soft in the back, which for slow speed isn't bad, but when you get kind of going a little bit, it just feels like there's a lot of head toss, so it could be better. I don't know exactly what I want to do right now to make it better. I know there are more companies coming up with aftermarket solutions for suspension, so I'm going to be looking at what's out there. Right now, I really like how low it is, so that 2-inch 37 combo to me is a really nice fit. But I cannot believe how well it works in terms of off-road performance and on-road. It wasn't too heavy to steer. I never felt like the Jeep really needed a lot, but it could benefit from a little bit more travel for sure, and a little bit more valving. But man, Jeep really nailed it with the 392 in many ways. So that's really it. If you want to run 37s on your 392, just buy a 2-inch bump stop landing pad for the back, bolt it on, and that's about it. You do have to be careful with backspacing. I think if I had 4 inches of backspacing or 3.5 inches of backspacing with something as big as like a Nitto that's a real true to size 37, it would have rubbed on that outer lip of the flare and probably would have been more of an issue. The fact that I'm in the high fives with the backspacing on these AEV wheels was fantastic. It really keeps it tucked in nicely, so I think you got to be really cautious with that. Beyond that, that's really all you need. It's pretty awesome how well that works out. I will take the opportunity to address 2 questions that I have been getting a lot of about the 392. Number one is, how often do I drive it in 2-wheel drive since I put the Taser on? And I don't usually have it in 2-wheel drive for daily driving. When I just hop in it and I'm running the kids up to daycare or school or wherever, it's usually in 4-high auto, and that's just kind of how I default it. I like how it drives around town better with that, mainly because if you want to hillbilly it and get on it, you didn't break the tires loose as easy and it just goes. If I'm going on the highway with it, I will put it into 2-wheel drive for sure. So if I'm going to take it on a trip, it's going to get clicked into 2-wheel drive, takes 2 seconds on the steering wheel, and that's how I drive it. On the highway, it's getting about 15.5 miles per gallon, and in town, I'm usually around 13.5. That's my fuel economy with it, with 37s. In terms of the other question that I get a lot, and that's about the top. It's got the Sky One Touch. I love it. Definitely glad that I got it. Has not leaked. My only complaint about it is it seems like it doesn't filter out as much heat as a regular hardtop, and I'm constantly like really jamming that AC to get it cooler in the cabin. That's the only thing that I feel like is really noticeable. It's like not as insulated as well as a hardtop, which hardtops aren't usually very insulated, but the last JL I had a white hardtop, and he didn't have that black heat, and it just didn't feel like it got as hot as this one gets for cabin heat. And it really, you're constantly having to keep the AC pumping a little bit more than I'm used to, or I have to in my Gladiator. So that's the only thing. I still like it. It's still really easy to use. The kids love it. It's really neat to have in the woods. I feel like it's the simplest way to put the top back without having to worry about panels or anything else like that. So yeah, still love it. Would definitely recommend it. Still love the 392. I think it's just a killer Jeep, and I've got some, you know, other things that I want to do to it. Nothing crazy. I'm not trying to put it on 40s and turn it into like what I've built the Gladiator into. I still want to keep it where it feels fast with the V8 and all that good stuff, but I'm going to fine tune it. It's fun. I like messing with stuff. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. Got more cool stuff coming, and we're always doing, you know, a variety of things on this channel. So if you got questions for me, you can always find me at Ali Mansour Editor on Instagram, or just drop them in the comments below. And until next time, I appreciate you guys watching, and hopefully you found this helpful and informative. Take care. Bye bye.